Well, g'day again. Just a couple of weeks ago, we put out a new video about the rule of law because we've been hearing such a lot about it over in America. And this is a follow up which takes it just a little deeper and hopefully makes you more aware of what is actually happening. So, in part one, we found that the maxims are the rules of law, but there are also others. The other rules of law are the court cases and the Bible. And the Bible plays a very significant role in how the court system is run. It is their rule book, and that's why they ask you to swear on the Bible when you go into court. If you swear on the Bible, you're denouncing the Bible or throwing or cursing their rules. So let's have a look at the 10 essential maxims or precepts in commercial law. Now, this is how the whole system operates. These 10 maxims explain everything that goes on in the courtroom. Some of you may be aware of them, but do not realize the depth that these go to, but they are the most important part of it. So we'll have a look at number one. A workman is worthy of his hire, and it is against equity for free men not to have the free disposal of their own property. Now, at the moment, we do not have that ability. So let's look at what the Bible says. And the Bible tells us in Exodus, Leviticus, Matthew, and Luke. And this is what I'm saying. The Bible and the court cases are set in stone. And if you ask the judge to uphold the rule of law, they must do this. Okay, so number two, all are equal under the law. No one is above the law. And under commercial law, natural and moral laws are binding on everyone, and no one can escape it. Commerce, by the law of nations, ought to be common and not to be converted into a monopoly and the private gain of the few. So what they are doing is they're using it for gain. They're using the courts as a bank. Now, if you uphold the maxims and show in your right place, and by the end of these 10, you should have a far better picture for upholding your rights. The Bible, once again, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and Matthew explain that. So you can go to these parts and you can actually quote the Bible to the judge and ask him to uphold the rule of law. And under their own rules, they must. Number three, in commerce, truth is sovereign. Okay, so your word is your bond. If the truth were not sovereign in commerce, all human action and interrelations, there would be no basis for anything. It would mean anything goes, each man for himself, and so it would be the law of the jungle. So you must tell the truth. And it's explained in the Bible once again at Exodus, Matthew, John, and Corinthians. Truth is expressed in the way of an affidavit. There can be no valid commercial transaction without someone putting the neck on the line to say, this is true, correct, complete, and not meant to mislead. So when you issue an affidavit, it is this two-edged sword. It cuts both ways. Someone has to take responsibility for it. If what you say in your affidavit is fact, not true, then those who are adversely affected can come back at you with justifiable recourse because you lied. So this is why it's most important that the truth is expressed in the way of an affidavit. Not saying that they always tell the truth in their affidavits, but once again, this is explained in the Bible, Leviticus, Numbers, Matthew, and James. So you can use, as I say, you can use the Bible quotes to express that. An unrebutted affidavit stands as the truth in commerce. Now, this is where a lot of us go wrong. Claims made in your affidavit, if not rebutted, emerges the truth of the matter. He who does not deny admits. Now, what they do when they're coming at us in commerce is they will, particularly if you've had a debt collection company or something like that come around, they will send a process server around. Now, what they haven't told you is what that process server does. That process server swears an affidavit that John Henry is John Henry Doe. In other words, the living man has accepted responsibility for the trust created in his name. So if we don't rebut that affidavit that the process server swore, then that stands as the truth in commerce, that we are the fiction. So you need to get the process server's name, and you must rebut their affidavit if you want to win in court. An unrebutted affidavit becomes the judgment in commerce. Now, when the judge has had, or when you have been issued with 3 notices from a debt collection agency, it's called a process of law. And the process of law is that because we haven't rebutted that affidavit, then those 3 notices become the judgment in law. So you need to check. So if anyone's coming at you from any angle, you need to check that they haven't sworn an affidavit. They have to. But if you don't rebut it, the unrebutted affidavit becomes the judgment in commerce. And it's in Hebrews 6:16 to 17. A matter must be expressed to be resolved. And now this is where I've seen so many people go wrong in the courts. They'll get up and they'll argue about the name and all sorts of things, but they'll get to a point where instead of asking the judge to dismiss the matter, they don't do anything. So unless you have said to the judge, we want this matter dismissed, and the legal maxim, he who fails to assert his rights has none. So unless you assert those and ask the judge to uphold the rule of law, then you have no rights. Which follows on to the next. We'll go to the Bible quotes first: Hebrews, Philippians, and Ephesians. Okay, now this is what happens in every case where we haven't expressed the matter to be dismissed. He who leaves the battle first loses by default. Okay, so if you leave the battlefield, this means that an affidavit which is unrebutted point for point stands as truth in commerce. Because it hasn't been unrebutted and has left the battlefield, then you have lost. The judge, the moment you walk out of that court, the judge can make his decision. And you can kick and scream as much as you like after that, but you're not going to win because you failed to rebut the affidavit. And that comes in the book of Job and Matthew. Sacrifice is the measure of credibility. Okay, so unless you're prepared to put your things on the line and assume a position, take a stand, or as regards the matter, you cannot have potential gain without exposing yourself to potential loss. So you have to bear the burden to also derive the benefit. So sacrifice, you have to stand up on your hind legs to get that. This comes in Acts 7. Now, the last of the commercial liens is a lien or claim can be satisfied only through rebuttal by counter affidavit, point for point, resolution by jury, or payment. Those are the only 3 ways that a claim can be satisfied. So unless you've done one of those, and once again, this comes in Genesis and Matthew, unless you have rebutted the affidavit point for point, and don't worry, they do get a bit sneaky, especially when you're dealing with, big debt collection companies. They'll refuse to take service when you send when you send notice to them and that sort of thing. So you've got to be a little bit careful about how you're going about it. But those 10 maxims are the key to the rule of law. And if you use them in the correct way, then you will win. Because commercial law is non-judicial. This is the basis or foundation on which any government or their court system can possibly exist or function. The only thing the courts are deciding are these basic rules of commercial law. So now that you know them, and if you uphold the rule of law, then the judge has to do this for you. The rule of law applies to us as well when we arrive at court and the judge nods his head. Okay, so when we arrive at the court, the appearance of the body corrects the flaw in the name, and the judge will just nod his head and laugh. Well, you've turned up, so you are the trustee for that trust. Hopefully that makes a bit of sense, and you can move forward in your battle to regain your true status in commerce.